Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for this afternoon's session. We're looking at remittances and generating them within Sage 50 accounts. So not a massive topic, this one, but still, obviously, loads of you have signed up for this session, so obviously worthwhile running it. The session should last around about 45 minutes today. There'll be plenty of time to hopefully for you to ask your questions and get them answered as well. And today we're joined by Tina, Jackie and Abby, who will be on hand to answer any questions that you might have. Now, if you do have any questions during this session, you don't need a microphone, so you'll not be able to verbally ask them. You find if you've got a microphone, it'll just be muted. So any questions that you do have for either myself or the team on hand today, then you'll need to type them in the questions panel. You have a little box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you can't currently see that, on your toolbar, you just need to click that little icon, the one that looks like the speech bubble containing the question mark. It should expand the panel and you'll get that box in the bottom right. So that's your way of communicating with us during the session today. So any comments or questions you have, pop them in there and we'll try our best to pick them up. Now, we are expecting the session to be really, really busy. So apologies in advance if we don't get round to answer your specific question. There's loads of help information available from our help center though. And you can download handouts for today's session. So there's a copy of the slides, they'll have some clickable links, but all of the information that we are covering today is available in our help center, and it's very easy to find that information, access it as well. But keep your questions coming, and we'll, as I say, we'll try our best. Later today, you will receive a follow-up email. That follow-up email will include a number of links. There will be one link to our webinar registration page. So if you want to attend any other webinars, you can sign up for those. They're all free to attend. And the other link will be to our recordings. So if you need a bit of a recap on anything we've covered today, or maybe you've missed some other topics that you're interested in, then do take advantage of that. So you'll get that round about an hour after we finish today's session. This is what we're going to be covering in this session today though. So a little bit of an introduction to remittances. I'm then going to go through, just mention a little bit about the availability of the options that you've got available to you. So print and email. And we'll run a few polls during the session as well, just to get a little bit of background on what level of the software people are using, and also how people are currently generating remittances if you are actually doing that. We're then going to run through demonstrations of generating remittances, and this is where there's a little bit of a difference between essentials and the standard and professional level of software. Now, if we have got people on the essentials level with us today, I am going to start with that one, just to get that one out the way, and then it'll bring us on nicely to the standard and professional level so you can see the differences, and then we'll have a look at emailing remittances as well, which is obviously most common these days. Just at the end, we'll explain more about the additional support that's available, and then we will hang around to try and answer any questions that you might have as well. Right, okay, so we'll get started. So a little bit of background to remittances first of all. So advantages of generating remittances and sending them to your supplier. So sending a remittance with your payment to your supplier, obviously it's going to help to try and reduce errors, your payment queries as well. Of course, these days, if you're paying online, you might do this separately. Historically, you probably would have sent a check with a remittance, but these days you might pay online and send the remittance via email, or even print it and post that separately. Now, it's quick and easy to generate a remittance, and we'll see that in this session today. And obviously at this time of doing that, post your supplier payment is part and parcel of the same task. And of course, you have both email and print options available. I'll run a bit of a survey on that one a little bit later on. Now, as far as printing and emailing your remittances, you've really got two options. And it's going to be dependent on the level of software that you're using. Now, if you're on Essentials, the process of generating remittances, you've got to do it there and then, and you'll see that in the demonstration today. So you've got that sort of as that opportunity to generate your remittance at the time of entering your payment. If you're on the standard or the professional level of the software, then you've got options in relation to that, whether you want them to be generated automatically, or you want to choose when they generate. You might not necessarily want to generate a remittance each and every time. So there is a setting for that as well. Now, if you're not sure what level of software you're on, just if you've got Sage 50 available to you, just on your title bar, it will say something like Sage 50 Cloud Accounts Essentials or Sage 50 Cloud Accounts Professional. So you can check that, but you can also check within your software as well. Just within Help and About, there's a license information section in the middle, and it will actually display the variant that you're on. So again, it'll either end in Essentials, Standard, or Professional. Now, to give us a little bit of background on that one as well, I'm just going to get you to quickly pop an answer to that question. So I'm going to pop a poll on your screen. So if you could let me know which variant of Sage 50 accounts you're actually using. So is it Essentials? Is it the Standard or Professional level? Or are you not sure? So if you could pop an answer in that, please. And that will just give me a little bit of background, and we can obviously shape the webinar a little bit. I'll share the results with you in just a moment as well. So I'll wait till I get a decent percentage of you having voted for that one, and then I'll close the poll and share the results with you. Right, that's excellent. Right, I'll close it at that point. Let me share the results with you as well, just so you can see that. So we got about 8% of you saying that you're on the Essentials, the vast majority on the Standard or the Professional level, and about 12% of you not sure at this stage. So you might not even be using Sage 50 just yet. You might just be looking at it as a potential user of Sage 50. But maybe you just don't have it available to you as well. Okay, that's fine. Let's go back to the slides. If I can find the right option, there we go. Okay, now when it comes to generating remittances, we're going to run through two demos. One is I'm going to show you first of all what the process looks like in Essentials. And then we'll move on to the Standard and Professional option, which has the specific remittance option, meaning you can reprint them and you can also print them in batches or email them for that matter as well. So I'm going to start with Essentials. Now I'm going to demonstrate remittances in the Essentials level of software using version 28, but don't let that confuse you in any shape or form. I've got my version 28 configured as the Essentials level of the software. So there are no differences for remittances with regard to the versions. So let me share my screen. We're going to run through a quick demo. Right, so I'm in version 28. It is the Essentials level, so it tells me on the title bar at the top. And to access and generate a remittance, we need to do that when we enter the supplier payment. Now we can enter a supplier payment either within suppliers, you've got the supplier payment option at the top, or you can do that within bank accounts as well. This time on the payments menu, you've got the supplier payment option. So if we just pop into that, it doesn't matter which screen or how I access that one, it's the same process. So I'm just going to quickly enter a supplier payment. I'll just leave the default bank selected, choose a supplier. I've got some outstanding transactions against this supplier, and all I need to do, fill in the payment details. So I'll just accept today's date for reference. I'm just going to say online. And I'll leave the amount set to 0 at the moment. It'll just add that up as I start paying off the items. So we'll pay off the first item. So I'll just click pay in full. I could have just typed the value in as well, but I'll just do the one item at this point. Now what I need to do on Essentials, because it's at this point when you need to click create remittance at the top. So it's an as at opportunity. So we'll click create remittance. It'll bring up the remittance advice printing. Now again, you've got either the option to print it or email it, or you could even save it a file if you wanted to. And you've got your various layouts available. Now, with regard to layouts as well, you've got one which is designed for plain paper printing or for emailing. You might just be able to see that. If I just maximize that, you'll see it says print or email. Let's go back to where it was. You've got two that are designed for different stationery. You can design your own. You can also highlight one, and if you think, right, well, I want to tweak that, I want to add my logo, etc., you can do that as well. You would just highlight it and edit it. You can get into the report designer that way. Now, I'm just going to output to email at this point. I'll select that first layout. This one is designed to work with Outlook. Now, if you use webmail, you can set them up to work with that as well. And I'm going to come on to emailing a little bit later on. So just going to click run. Tells me the report has successfully output to email, and I OK that. And then I can just close out of that remittance printing. Now at this stage, I still need to save that payment. So I haven't saved the payment just yet. I've gone into create remittance, I've generated that, I've output it to email, and then I've just got to click save. And that's it done. Now, if you forget to do that, and this is quite a common query, this one. So if I'd gone into supplier payment, I'd entered the details of a payment. So let's say we were paying this one off in full. I'd say this one was online as well. And then I just click save. It means that I've missed that opportunity to generate that remittance because I need to do it there and then before I click save. Now, if you're in that position, what you need to do is delete your payment that you just entered and then re-enter it. Remembering, of course, to obviously create your remittance along the way. But that would be it done. Right, let's just close out of that for a moment. I'm going to pop into my email so you can see what's happened there. So in my drafts folder, by default, which is where it will save it, it's picked up the email address from the supplier's account, and it's generated an email for me. So here it is here. Now we can amend these settings, and I'm going to tell you more about how you go about amending settings and what options you've got a little bit later on in the session. But for now, by default, if you're integrating with Outlook, which I'm sure the vast majority of you, that's what you'll be using, choosing that layout, it will output it, it'll save it as a draft, and that means you can open the draft, you can make any changes you want. So if you want to change the subject line, or maybe you want to touch other documents, you want to maybe pop in things like your signature, for instance, you can do that. And then all you would do is you would click send and off it goes. Now you can automate that task to send it immediately if necessary. But that's the process in Essentials. Now that process is the same in Essentials in version 29. Just as I say, I've got them configured slightly different, just so you can see what the various processes look like. Right, any more questions on Essentials? I think the girls are picking those up quite nicely, the questions. Loads coming through, so keep your questions coming. Look like we're on top of them at the moment. As I say, apologies in advance if we don't get a chance to answer all of your questions. If you've downloaded the handout, the slides, some of them have links on, will take you across to the information that's in the Help Center. Right, let's close out of version 28. And I'm now going to go into version 29, which this time I've got configured as the professional level of the software. If you're sat there thinking, version 29, I'm not aware of that one, we run webinars on that one. We are in a phased rollout for version 29, so some of you may have it, some of you won't. So just keep an eye out for messages appearing in your software. If you want to see it in action, other than seeing how remittances are generated, then get yourself signed up for one of our version 29 webinars. All right, let's just quickly log in. All right, just try that one again. Click the wrong option there. Susan, you mentioned what does the remittance advice look like? We'll come on to a bit more about the formats, etc., and what it looks like a little bit later on in the session when we run through a few more demos. Right, let me just get rid of that message. Close that one. Right, so we're in version 29. It is the professional level of the software. We've got, again, we can access supplier payments in pretty much the same way. So in suppliers, we've got the supplier payment option, and in bank accounts, again, via the payments, because I don't have enough space on my toolbar, I've got them grouped, and I've also got supplier payment. But what I've also now got is I've got a remittances option. And we're going to be using that in this part of the demo. You don't get that on Essentials. So when you generate a remittance in either standard or professional, what it does is it feeds a copy of the remittance into the remittance area. Now, before we start running through it, I'm going to show you the setting. So if I go into settings and then bank defaults, you've got this option here, always create remittance. Now it will be ticked by default. So you can choose when you go to save your payment, do you want it to automatically generate that remittance or not? Or do you want it a bit like the Essentials level where when you're entering the payment, you've got to click a button to generate the remittance? So by default, it will be switched on. Okay, that. So Angela, you mentioned you don't appear to have a payments tab. So in suppliers, if you're in suppliers, you'll just have supplier payment at the top. If you're in bank accounts, you may well have the supplier payment listed separately, or you may, a bit like myself, you may have some of your icons grouped together. If you do, just click on the bottom part of the payments icon and you'll have a supplier payment listed within there. So it's just to do with the resolution I'm running and the size of the monitor. Right, we go and choose that supplier. So we're going to make some payments in exactly the same way. And I'll just, again, accept today's date, pop in a reference. I'm just going to say online. And again, I'll leave the amount 0 and I'll just come down the payment column and I'll just choose some of these invoices to pay off. So we'll do a couple of them this time. And then you'll notice there's no create remittance option at the top. And that's because I had that little checkbox ticked. So it's always going to create a remittance for me. So if I just save it, close out, and then this time if I go into payments and remittances, you'll see it's popped it in here. So that's the payment I've just entered. So this is where I would come if I want to print or email it. So it's a slightly different process if you're in standard or professional. Now I'll just generate another one first of all, before we do anything with that remittances area. So again, back to bank accounts, we'll choose supplier payment. I'll choose this one. Let's see if I can actually see if I've got a one with an outstanding balance. That would probably help. That one I'll do. I'll just say, actually, that's not a good example, that one, is it? Let me have a quick look at my suppliers. So we'll choose this Superior Technologies. Right. So supplier payment. We'll choose that Superior Technologies. I'll just type online in the reference again. Obviously, reference-wise, you can put whatever you want. And then in the payment, I'll just come down, pay in full, just to choose a couple of items, save it, close it out. And again, if I go into the remittances area within bank accounts, you'll see I've now got the two. Now, when I'm ready to print or email, this is where I'm going to come. So I'm coming into here and then I've got the print remittances, and it's pretty much at that point, it will be similar to the Essentials option. You choose our layout, choose our output, and send the remittance that way. We'll come back to that in a moment though. What I want to quickly show you is when within settings and bank defaults, this option isn't ticked, the always create remittance. So I'll just OK that one. Right, another supplier payment. We'll do that first one on the list because I know I've got lots outstanding on this one. Again, just accept all of the defaults. I'll put a reference at the top again of online, and we'll just choose to pay in full a couple of items. Now this time, because I've deselected that option to always create remittance, it gives me the option at the top to create a remittance. That means I've got the choice, do I want to generate one or not? Again, if I was just to save it at that point and I haven't chosen to create a remittance, I've missed that opportunity. So again, the way around that would be to delete the payment that I've just entered and saved, and then re-enter it, remembering to click the option to create the remittance at the top. Now, if I click create remittance, you'll notice it doesn't bring up the print email window like it did in Essentials. What it does instead, if I save that payment, if we pop into remittances, it adds it into this list. And the idea of this, I suppose it's more of a historic reason for this these days, is that the majority of people used to print remittances. And I'm sure you've had it where you've been in a busy office. If you go back to where you used to print all your documents, you would load your printer with stationery, go back to your desk, send them off to printer. In the meantime, someone sent something to the office printer and it's printed on your remittance stationery. So this would avoid that. So it means you could print them in a batch. You could let them build up and then generate them one or print them out in a batch or even email them. Right, now from here, let's say I wanted to generate the first two. Let's say I just wanted to print these ones. So again, I would select them on that list, print remittances, select the layout that I want to use. Now what you can do at this point, if I just preview them, so I think, Susan, you mentioned this one before, what do they actually look like? Remember, you can tailor them to suit your needs as well. So these are just standard layouts, but we'll run that to preview just so you can see what it looks like. So this is the one using that plain paper remittance layout. So you can see what it looks like. And obviously we could have just printed it at that point. Now, if you preview it or print it or output to file or email it, what it will do, it will flag it as printed. So let's just go back to remittances so you can see that. Now, all I'm left with are the ones that haven't been output yet. So again, we're letting them build up, and it means that we're not duplicating them. But let's say I did want to reprint one. What I would do is I would just come into this screen. I need to tick the box, show printed items, and it means I've got all of the remittances that I've done so far will actually be listed. Obviously, I can apply a date range, etc. within that as well. So if I did need to reprint one, I would just find it on the list, say that one again, print remittances, and off I go. Let's just use one of the other ones this time. So these two, the remittance layout, 11-inch stationery, A4 stationery, these are designed to be printed by default. So let's just preview that one so you can see what that looks like. Now the grey background is what it would look like on the stationery that Sage used to supply. We no longer sell stationery, but if you've got maybe compatible stationery, you can still get that, I believe. Then essentially that's what it's going to look like. It's not going to print the grey background itself. So again, you can see what that looks like. Right, now if I wanted to email it, all I would do, highlight it on the list, again, via print remittances, select the layout. I'm going to use that top one again. And this time, set the output to email, click run. It tells me it's been successfully output to email. I OK that. And again, disappears from that list because essentially it's now been output. That means I'm not going to accidentally come in and keep duplicating and bombarding my suppliers with the same remittance time and time again. So once it's output, it disappears from that list. It's flagged as printed and it's automatically filtered from that list. Now, if I switch across to my Outlook, you can see in the drafts folder, I've got literally the one that I've just generated there. So let's open it so you can see it. So you've got the email address that's been pulled through from the supplier account. It's got a default subject of, it's got my company name in, which is Sage Demos version 29, and then it says remittance advice. These can all be tweaked. We'll come onto the email settings in a moment. It's attached it as a PDF. And we've got some default text in there as well. Again, that can be preset. And if I was happy with that one, didn't want to make any changes, I just click send, and that's it. A couple of questions there about tweaking your layout. So adding things like, Yuki, you mentioned there, adding a company logo, you'd like to do that one. Nice and easy to do that. I'm not going to cover that in today's session, though. I'm not going to demonstrate that one. There is a recorded webinar on that one. So when you get your follow-up email, there'll be various Report Designer webinar recordings. Do check those out. It'll explain how you go about adding things like logos, extra text to a layout, adding what you term data fields, possibly drawing lines and boxes on there as well. So it's really up to you what you want it to look like. Right. Okay, so those are the basic processes for generating your remittances and sending them. I am going to concentrate on email settings in just a couple of minutes. Now, just before I do that, I want to quickly go back to the remittances option. And I want to quickly mention the purge and the delete options at the top and what the difference is between them. Now you'll see it's grayed out at the moment, and that's because I've got nothing listed. But if I click show printed items, you'll see that they do become active because I've got some options listed then. Now the delete option, what that will do, it will delete anything that I've got highlighted at this point. So if I was to go down and say, right, I want to get rid of these ones here, I could then highlight them, click delete, click yes, and it's going to get rid of them. I could apply a date range so that only remittances up to a certain date are displayed. Might be a quicker way for me to select the ones that I want to get rid of. But basically, it's just a case of selecting what you want to get rid of, click delete, and that gets rid of it. The purge option, what that will do is anything that's flagged as printed, when you click purge, whether it's selected or not, when you click purge, anything flagged as printed, so with a Y in this printed column, it will get rid of it. Now, I'm not going to do that because I want to pick up on some of the email settings in a moment, but that's the difference between them. Delete will get rid of what you've got selected. Purge will get rid of anything that's printed, irrespective of dates, that one as well. Hope that makes sense. Right, now I'm going to go back to the slides at this point, and I want to pick up a little bit more on emailing remittances. And before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run another poll at this stage. So I'll just pop that on your screen. And if you could let me know how you currently generate remittances. Do you print them? Do you email them? Do you maybe use a combination of the two? But let me know. So again, I'll just wait till I get a decent percentage of you having voted. And I'll then share the results with you as well. Now, obviously, printing them out is straightforward, but there are, and obviously comparing print to email, there are advantages to emailing. It's quick, it's simple, it's virtually instantaneous as well, and obviously, it reduces the time that you spend on that task. It's cheaper because there's no things like you've got no stationery or printing costs or postage costs. But some people still like a document to hand to essentially give this supplier though. So it's, again, we'll see what we get. Right, let me close that poll and I'll share the results with you as well. So as you can see, just under 20% of you currently print. 27% of you use a combination of printing and emailing. Just under 60% of you will email only. You never know, after today's session, we might get a higher percentage if you're thinking, right, maybe I'll switch to email only. It looks a lot easier than I thought it was, a bit more flexible than I thought it was as well. Right, let's hide that. And we'll go back to our slides. So with regard to emailing your documents, and this is just Sage 50 in general, obviously the software, it does make it easy to email your documents. If you need detailed information on it, there are some great webinar recordings on emailing documents, both invoices and statements. And the same principles apply when it comes to amending those email settings. Emailing, it means that sending invoices, orders, remittances, completing your statement run, it is quick and simple. Now, if you're on the standard or professional, you've got that option to send them out individually or in a batch. And even if you output in a batch, what it will do, it will split them. So it will generate separate emails, just in case anyone's concerned about that. Now, there is a default layout that contains settings that work with Microsoft Outlook. We've looked at that one. If you use webmail, then you can configure your remittance layouts or any other layouts in the software for that matter to work via SMTP. Now, there's information in our help center on how you go about doing that. Now, there are two areas that you can use to amend and apply email settings. One is your email defaults, and the other is within the report designer itself. So let me show you quickly from a report. I'll quickly try and show you both aspects, the email defaults and the report design side. So we'll go back to my screen. And for the email defaults, you've got an option within settings, and then halfway down, you'll have email defaults. Now use this with caution. If you've amended your layouts already, then don't use this option. You want to go into, say, remittances and edit that within the report designer. If you haven't touched your layout at all yet, then you can come into here. So you can see we've got a remittance tab at the top, for instance, or we can come down and we can amend basic settings. Now, these are the settings that would apply if you integrate with Outlook. If you use different email client, so say for instance you were using webmail, we come back to remittance, you'll see some of the options change. But I'm sure the vast majority of you will be using Outlook. Again, the recordings of email settings, you'll find that available online. So do check that one out. That would be covered in the emailing invoices part 1. And then amending your layout and email settings within the report designer is going to be covered in emailing invoices part 2. So again, watch those because the settings are pretty much the same. Zoe, you mentioned there, is it possible to email remittances to more than 2 email addresses? Yeah. As long as you've got them set up within the suppliers, it would mean though that you need to amend your layout if you want it to be picked up automatically from the supplier's account. So that is possible. And again, it will be explained how to do that in the part 2 webinar. So do check that out. So you've got basic options in here that you can amend. And then once you've chosen your options, you would then click apply, and you would just come down and say, right, I want to apply those settings to, and you would select your layout or layouts if you use more than one. And it would just do that in the background. The other option for amending your settings, if I go back to bank accounts and I'll access remittances, I just need to get the point where we can output. So we'll just choose this one, create remittances. So similarly, when you get to, if you're in Essentials and you get to this screen, you can highlight your layout and you can choose Edit at the bottom. Now that will open your layout within the report designer. So this is where you can amend the design if you wanted to add your logo, for instance. Just as an example, we could click add image / logo, pop it in at the top, and then just follow the various options through to browse for your logo. Let's just get rid of that one. Again, if you need more advice on that type of thing, adding a logo, do watch the webinar recording or refer to the information in the Help Center. But you'll find the email settings within the report menu and then email settings. And this is where you've got various options in here. So again, I think it was Susan that mentioned it earlier. Not Susan, sorry. It was Zoe that just mentioned it there about emailing it to more than one email address. You can come into this area and we can start adding additional email addresses to pull through from the supplier record. If you're on version 28 or below, you have up to 3 email address fields within a supplier record. And if you're on version 29, you have up to 6. So it's increased by 3 on the latest version. So that's how many you'd be able to go up to. Just be a case of adding them in. But that's, as I say, that's covered in detail in the webinar recording, that one. So here you can choose which of the email addresses from the supplier you want to send it to. You might want to CC an address in, so maybe your mailbox gets a copy of what was emailed out, or even BCC it. You can amend things like subject lines, so by default it would pick up your company name on this specific layout. So when it generates the email, your company name plus it will say remittance advice. If you needed to change that, you can do that. Choose how the report should be sent. By default, it'll go as PDF. Again, you can choose the format of the file name for that PDF. You've got some options that are used if you integrate via SMTP. And then you've got options, the sending option at the bottom. So do I want to send it immediately, or do I want to save it to the mailbox? So when we output the email earlier on in the session, you'll notice it went to the drafts folder, and it meant I could amend it before I actually sent it. But it may be that I think, well, actually, my layout, what I want to do is I want to send it immediately. I don't want that option. I just want to make it as slick as possible. So when I say output that to email, off it goes. So again, these settings are all outlined in the webinar recording and the information that's available within our Help Center. Right, let's pop back to the slides. And it does bring us to the end of the demonstrations in today's session. I want to quickly mention some of the other webinars as well. So we got version 29 coming up. Obviously, I've been using version 29 today. If you want to see that in action and see what's new in version 29, please get yourself signed up for one of those webinars. We've got some old favorites as well, VAT returns, year ends, but we've also got some new sessions coming up as well. So next week, we're going to be looking at importing records. We'll be picking up on user management, the recordings. I've got a link there on the, if anyone's downloaded the handouts, the link's included there, so you can watch those. But your links will be included on your follow-up email, which you'll receive in round about an hour's time. We are going to hang around for questions, so if you've got any questions, we'll look like we're just about up to date with the questions. So again, we'll try and answer as many as we can. So your follow-up email is with you in round about an hour's time, and it will include the links if you want to register for any of those webinars. If you can't attend them, just a case of accessing the recordings page nearer the time, and the recording will be made available shortly after the webinar ends. There'll be a little exit survey as you leave the session today. If you've got any feedback, thoughts, ideas that you want to share with us, then if you can take a minute to complete that survey, greatly appreciated. We love to read those comments and see what you think, make sure we're hitting the mark or not. Also, if you've got any ideas for webinars you'd like to see covered going forward, again, let us know. Right, so it brings us to the end of the session. As I say, we're going to hang around for just try and pick up as many those last few questions. If you're about to leave, I hope you've enjoyed the session, and we hope to see you on some other sessions soon as well. So a few of you mentioning about upcoming sessions and how do you get links. Watch out for that follow-up email. The other thing you can do as well to register for future webinars, if I just quickly share my screen again. Let's close out the report designer. I'll just get back to the main screen. On your toolbar on the left, you've got this option called Home. If you click that, it'll give you a series of panels. It's not just on version 29 that you'd have this option, but one of the panels will be free webinars. So all you need to do, click your option. It'll take you across to our webinar registration page, which is this one, and you'll be able to see what sessions we've got booked in. So this is the one that you've attended today. Importing records next Tuesday, user management Wednesday, nominal records the following week. So get yourself signed up. So nice and easy to access that. Sally, you mentioned about do we supply webinar attendance certificates? We don't apply any certificates for CPD purposes. You will get a confirmation email thanking you for attending, but we don't issue any certificates itself. Mel, you mentioned there about downloading the handout. There should be a little link on your toolbar for you. So on your toolbar down the right hand side, it's a little icon, looks like a piece of paper with a folded over corner. If you click that, the handout should be listed. So if you give it a highlighted on the list, then there should be an option to download it or save it. If you don't get a chance to do that, or you find for whatever reason you can't do that, on the follow-up email, there will be a link to our Sage City, or the Sage City area of our websites, and you will be able to download it from there as well. So we make that available afterwards as well. A couple of questions about recordings as well. Yes, all sessions will be recorded. We don't necessarily have a record every single session, but every single topic we will have recordings for. We make those available to you afterwards. Right, I think that's us up to date with the questions. We seem to have covered the majority of them. So if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, if we've missed it, apologies for that. But do check out the information in the Help Centre, and remember our support team is on hand as well. So once again, many thanks for coming along. If you can take a minute to complete that survey, that should pop up as you leave today's session. Greatly appreciated, but otherwise take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you again. Many thanks.